My name is Lyndsey Stonebridge. I'm Professor of Humanities and Human Rights at the University of Birmingham in the UK. Welcome to my exp. Hannah Arendt has really helped me think through the last 10 years when so many things have happened that are so difficult to think with. And at the back of my mind, there's this brilliant quotation that she writes in the beginning, in the introduction to Origins of Totalitarianism, which is her master text, her big text. And she says in there, she says, comprehension, how do we think through the unprecedented, the unbelievable? And she says three things. She says, on one hand, it's really important not to look away just because something is outrageous. Quite often we find ourselves saying, but this is unbelievable. I can't believe this is happening. So just because something is outrageous doesn't mean you can't think about it. Then she says, nor can you just use reason, nor can you just use the habits of reason and history. You're not necessarily going to work out what it is about your present, your unprecedented present, by working out what happened before. If you've got a master narrative, you're not going to grasp it either. And then she says, and this is the bit that's really, really stuck with me over the last few years, she said comprehension instead, really thinking, means both an attentive facing up to and a resisting of reality, whatever that might be. So an attentive facing up to and a resisting of reality, whatever that might be. She published this book in 1951. She started thinking about it when she was a refugee herself on the run from the Nazis. Hannah Arendt was a Jewish middle-class girl. She was born in Hanover, but she was brought up in Königsberg, right up in the north, what was then Prussia. And so she had left Germany in 1933. She had had an awful lot of reality both to attend to think about, and to face up to. Wind back the story. When she was brought up in Königsberg, Arendt had the good fortune to be brought up in the home of Western philosophy, in the home principally of Immanuel Kant, who she took very seriously indeed. Now, Königsberg might look like a backwater, but at the time, in the 18th century, it was incredibly cosmopolitan. It's a hugely pretty town. It has 7 bridges in it, and there's this wonderful game that you can play, which is, can I get through the town whilst crossing each of those 7 bridges without having to cross either of them twice? How can I play that game? Now, this is an important story because this is where Kant comes in, who used to cross those bridges. And Kant and his generation worked out, so we don't actually have to spend all your life running around the bridges. You can reason, you can use mathematical reason, you can use pure reason to work out that, no, in fact, you can't go over each bridge only once, you'll have to cross one once. So Kant was, this is where our story starts, terribly important, because he was the first person who said how we think, how we are in the world, how our mind works is absolutely constitutive about how we be, how we manage to be in the world. So think about Kant walking through Königsberg, the great thinker, the great reasoner, the great theorist of mind. And then fast forward to the early part of last century and imagine the young Hannah Arendt walking through those streets, crossing the same bridges, thinking. She was, from the start, a thinker, a walker, a thinker, a doer. She started reading Kant when she was only 16, and Kant taught her something that she never ever forgot, and it's really quite straightforward. Kant taught her, 1, that we think, and 2, that how we think has moral consequences in the world. One of the really terrific things that Arendt teaches us about thinking is that it's an everyday thing. We all do it. Thinking is radically democratic. Okay, so she didn't have much time for the idea of the intellectual or the great philosopher locked inside his tower, proclaiming on the rest of the world. She pointed out something that we all know, that very clever people can be completely thoughtless, that people who have brain power, can grasp complex ideas, etc., can actually do real damage through their thoughtlessness. So what she liked about thinking, and she was quite Socratic in this, is quite often that kind of two-in-one conversation you've got in your head isn't going anywhere. It's not trying to work something out. We don't wake up in the morning and think, how do I work out how to get breakfast? Or how am I going to cope with the culture wars this morning? We wake up and we just have that conversation in our head that leads us through. And why she wanted thinking to be so much part of education and so much of our lives is she says, when you're really thinking, when you're having that conversation, you're not so much owning concepts or ideas. You are, she said, defrosting them. That total conversation you have in your head, you start to think, and what does the word house mean? What does the word migrant mean? I've been hearing it all the time. What does the word unprecedented mean? What does it mean when people say moving forward? Do they mean they want to ignore things? She said the kind of thought we have, that kind of speculative perplexity about the world, that was the thing that she really wanted to grasp.